Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Writing in the Dark video with me, Tim Wagoner. Today I want to talk about a common problem, I guess, situation that horror writers and really writers of any kind of dark content run into. And that's that people sometimes think that we are our characters, or we want to do the horrible things that we may write about, that we are, truly dark inside, that we are potential killers, potential, harmers of others. Um, and the short answer is, of course we're not. Um, the true answer is a little bit longer. I've dealt with this a couple different times. The biggest one was, it was years ago, but it was a woman in Florida who read my novel Pandora Drive, which is, it's very surreal like a lot of my novels, but also has extreme violence and sex in it. Why she read the whole thing beginning to end, I'll never know. But once she read it, and she looked at my bio, probably looked at my website, and saw that I taught at a community college, she wrote a letter to the police in the town, saying that I shouldn't be anywhere near young people because who knows what I'll do. To her credit, she also wrote in that she hoped she was making a mistake and she was overreacting. But the police came and they spoke to the dean, and the dean's like, no, he's harmless. And the police went away. And I didn't find out about it till years later when the dean retired and sent the letter to me. But the woman, she was really, really upset and really, really worried. And so there's a couple different reasons why I think this happens. One big reason is, and I do not mean this to sound insulting in any way, but people who are not creative don't really understand how creative people's imagination works. You see this a lot in movies and TV shows, and creative people who write these scripts should know better. But what we often see is writers who only write stuff based on experience they have, even adventures. It's like Jules Verne will go off, H.G. Wells will go off and have an adventure, and that's what makes their novels. They can't just imagine it. People that don't have imaginations that can create, weird situations, weird worlds, whatever, they don't know where we come up with it. And so the only thing that they can rely on is where they come up with ideas, which may often be in response to personal experience, or where they come up with stories they tell each other. So yes, we can make this up. This stuff is made up. It's not stuff that we live. Or if we draw on something we live, we add, fantastical elements to it. So another thing, at least in terms of my case, is that my first reaction, the first things I see, I wouldn't call them negative. My wife would, but it's because my mind leaps to the first negative outcome that could happen because of a choice I'm going to make or something I'm going to encounter, or even an idea. It's just how my mind works. Part of it was probably how I was raised. My mother was an agoraphobic, and basically the message we got in my house was if you walked outside, you would die. I'm only exaggerating a little bit. One year I was at a conference in Minneapolis with the chair of the English department, my boss, and we were sitting in the lobby, and he's a very literary writer, poet, and he would ask me, why do you write the kind of stuff you write? And I thought about it for a moment. We'd been wandering around the city, for most of the day. And I said, did you see that banana we passed a number of times? And he said, what are you talking about? I said, there was a banana somebody dropped on the sidewalk, and we passed it several times. When we first passed it, it was a perfectly fine banana, but as the other 2 or 3 times we passed it, it got worse because people kept stepping on it. Till the very end, it was just gray, nasty mush. And my boss was like, I didn't see that at all. And I said, well, now you know why I write horror. I see the squashed bananas. And I do. And it's not just that we see them. We're fascinated with it because we're like, it's a deviance from reality. It draws your attention, or from normalcy, I should say. It draws your attention. You wonder, why is this happening? Why is it here? Why is everybody else ignoring it? How come I'm the only one seeing it? Or when it comes to, the darker aspects of existence, the violence people do to each other, the horrible things that happen, we wonder why. We're disturbed by these things. We explore them in order to process them and try to understand it and try to understand our thesis. Not thesis, thinking about composition classes I usually teach, to understand, our feelings about it, to get catharsis from it, to process it. And we do that through story. We get a lot out. horror writers are some of the most, they're some of the sweetest, most kind, most gentle people you'll meet. My wife is not a reader by any means or a fan, but she loves to go to horror conventions because of the people. And it's because I think we get a lot out. We come to terms with, we explore the darkness inside ourselves. We come to terms with the fact it's there. And when you accept that it exists, it doesn't have as much power. You know, mushrooms go in the dark, right? The bad things grow in the dark. Let light in, and they don't grow as much. Maybe they won't die. Maybe they'll still be there. But you make peace with them. Um, the other thing about horror is that it's because it's pretend, it's a buffer between the real awful content that happen, not content, events, things that happen in real life, and the stuff that happens in a story. It gives people a certain amount of distance. It's like the way to view an eclipse. You can't view eclipses directly. They'll burn out your eyes. But you can view them indirectly by either one time I was outside during an eclipse. I didn't even know. Actually, it's happened to be twice in my life. And when I looked down to see the shadows from trees, and they're little half-moon shadows because of the way, when the eclipse was occurring. I could see it that way, but I couldn't look up and see it. And so for a lot of people, readers, writers, viewers, the way to try to deal with darkness in the real world is through pretend, because it gives us a buffer, gives us a way to do it. I can watch true crime shows as long as they have recreations. It's much harder for me to watch them if they actually show a crime scene with blood everywhere. It's very difficult for me to watch if the people, like the loved ones, the survivors, whatever, if they're obviously traumatized and the emotions are so raw. If it's been a while and they can talk about it, with a buffer, like the buffer of space, time, I can't handle that. So I think that, horror and dark elements of any kind in entertainment, in literature and art, can help. We need the kind of buffer in order to process stuff. I'm trying to look at my notes here without my reading glasses. So horror in general, whenever I talk about what makes horror, it's a distortion of reality, a nightmarish distortion of reality. Or if you like, instead of reality, just think normalcy. And so extreme violence, with sexual acts as part of it, maybe not, depends on what extreme elements artist is exploring. If they are removed from, their distortion of what people consider to be normal, it makes you look at things in different ways. It forces you to see things in ways you might not, to think about things. It forces you to feel. And when you're writing art for people who are in general very numb because of all the massive amounts of messages that come at us all the damn time, it's not a new thing. Probably even before the 20th century, artists were doing this to try to wake people up, to get their attention, to bring them into the now and focus on what's happening. It doesn't work for everybody because not everybody takes to that, but it does work for some people, and it is used for an artistic purpose. One of the big things, too, is that extreme elements, extreme violence, bizarre, nightmarish things, whatever, they up the stakes in a story. It's just practical in terms of that. If you've got somebody who is in danger of being tortured to death, and they're trying to escape the horrible, mass torture, Leatherface or in his family or whoever, the stakes are up, because you're not just dealing with like a mean boss and you're trying to find a way to get a promotion, even though your boss is mean, like you might in a drama or maybe a comedy. The stakes are upped very, very high. And again, it is like a nightmare. And because of that, too, it makes it like a human experience. We have nightmares all the time. I tend not to have super vivid ones. My wife, who is not a horror fan, has massively vivid nightmares that go on and on and on. I'm kind of jealous, because if I had them, I'd have more stuff to write about. So we can write about, nightmares. We don't call them that. We want you to pretend they're real, just like when you have an actual nightmare, you think it's real. But it's a way of dealing with a real aspect of human existence, too. So there's the practical part of it, upping the stakes, practical part that it can make for an exciting story. Some people just respond to that. I really don't read a lot of crime because I don't really care a whole lot about, is this robber going to shoot somebody during the bank robbery? If the robber was a vampire, maybe I'd care about him more, because I find those things stimulate my imagination. They draw me in. Um, Not everybody responds that way, and that's okay. But if you don't, why would you think that other people who do, there's something wrong with them just because they need to, for whatever reasons, dark elements stimulate their imagination. And so equating people that write dark elements in their fiction or put dark elements in their movies and art, or people that enjoy those things or seek those things out, with people who actually are, you know, for lack of a better word, evil, or who are, they're struggling with mental illness. The vast, vast majority of people with mental illness are no harm to anybody but themselves. But because media, focuses on serial killers, and they've focused on people with mental illness as villains, horrible villains, for years and years and years, probably way back when people didn't even understand mental illness. It was probably a lot more common. Because of this, ordinary everyday people that don't really know a whole lot about mental illness, they just think mentally ill people are deranged and they're going to kill them. And there's a certain amount of survival stuff that way. It's the reason why if somebody, seems sick or they've got a deformity of some sort or disability of some sort, the animal in us goes, uh-oh, that might happen to me too. So that it's a normal response to have. But it's a mistake, thinking that horror writers or horror audience is dangerous is like thinking that everybody who owns a knife is going to become Michael Myers. And I'm just talking about everyday knives, because Michael always grabs them from like the butcher block on the counter. So it's like, I got a butcher block like that. It's right out there. If I pick up one of those knives, I'm usually like, I used to get a shooting pain actually down my arm whenever I would pick up a knife like that. That went away over the years went on, but I still feel uncomfortable picking one up because I know the damage it could do, to me, to anybody. I don't ever think this would be great to go ahead and slash somebody with. So think of the millions upon millions of knives in this world, and people are not grabbing them and going and stabbing people. Just because there are popular images of and real people who use knives to hurt other people, rarely, but they compared to the whole human race, but they do. It's the same way that, yeah, there may be serial killers that have fantasies and draw pictures and write weird diary entries about their fantasies of hurting other people and may actually go do it. That is not normal. It is not usual. And it's not the kind of thing to assume that just because somebody writes dark content, creates dark content, films it, draws it, acts it on the stage, whatever, that we have the same impulses as somebody who might actually kill somebody. We don't. I think in general, people may kind of think that horror fans, horror creators are a little weird. I don't think most of them probably think that we're dangerous, but it does happen. And it is something we have to deal with. And I don't get emails like this, but I know writers who do, where they say, oh, you're sick for writing that. You should never be around little kids because of this. So if you have that kind of impulse, if you happen to be one, I don't know why you'd be watching a video from a horror writer, but if you do, just think twice, or at least maybe think of some of the things that I've talked about and use them. If somebody asks you, why do you write that stuff? Or how can you do that? What's wrong with you? So you have something maybe to go ahead and kind of enlighten them a little bit, and ultimately to hell with those people too. I mean, we like what we like, we create what we create in the spirit of sharing with other people, of creating community, of exploring the human condition, everything from the simplest entertainment to the greatest work of art ever produced in the human race is still doing those things. They're still making connections. So you're doing a great thing, whatever kind of horror you're writing, even if some people don't understand it. All right, so that's it for now. Take care. See you next time.